Want to be a part of the conversation? Then let us know on the TNT Radio Interactive Live Chat Room, lighting the fuse for freedom. TNT.
Even though the DNC is in Chicago, it's time to talk about that NYC Connection, and to do so is everybody's favorite former NYPD officer, Sal Greco. Now, Sal, Kathy Hochul, she's on the list of the heavy hitters. She's up there with Hill and Bill Dog. She's up there with the Barack star, etc. Even Joe Biden, who God knows if they're going to wheel him out or how they're going to get that going. Probably shoot him up pretty good, give him 15 minutes. Maybe even let him phone it in, tape style. I don't know what's happening there. But Hochul, they're giving her a prime time spot. Now, as far as I've seen, and I'm Exodus. I'm gonna be a New York expat now for 4 years coming up in October. She hasn't done anything that anybody's happy about. I mean, anybody. I don't know if we have free and fair elections there, that Lee Zeldin isn't the governor at this point. I'm no Zeldin fan, at that point, but I still find it really hard to believe she got it. But they're rolling her out. I mean, obviously, look, I get it. It's a big name state. They want her to be the identity politics replacement of Cuomo, the grab-ass king, who's probably going to get his money back, by the way. He's suing all the way. So what are your thoughts on this? Is this putting her on the global stage and maybe running her out as the governor, putting her somewhere else? Or is she going to be a longtime governor of this state?
Well, I think she bought her way in. I mean, she's a prolific fundraiser as far as like high-ranking Democrats go. She fundraises all the way out in California. I mean, she rakes in a lot of money. I mean, her husband was a big-time attorney at one point in the U.S. government. He was in the U.S. Attorney's Office. So she's a prolific fundraiser. She also today made news for issuing a governor's warrant on Harvey Weinstein, who must now remain in New York State until his retrial of his rape case, because California was trying to extradite him back to California to serve his sentence that he was found guilty of over there. So she did do something today.
No, let's talk about that, because the Weinstein case, first of all, he won some of his appeals on the convictions, but there were other cases also in California. So does that mean that he's out of jail in New York right now awaiting that, or is he in jail still? He's out of jail, isn't he?
He's in custody in a hospital under the watch of the courts because he's technically still facing the conviction. So he's still supposed to be in jail for California, but he's here facing the retrial of a rape. And I commend his lawyer, who's only known for two things, Artie Idala. He got Lawrence Taylor off his case, and he got this appeal overturned. Other than that, he's a bagman for Eric Adams, and probably right now, he doesn't want to even know who Eric Adams is. But Artie Idala did get that overturned. It was one of the few things that it was the way that the original trial was a little bit of a railroad job. Even though we don't like Harvey Weinstein, we still need to be fair. But, in a retrial, how is this going to go? Because remember, he still has to go back to California and serve out that sentence. I don't know if they're going to make it concurrent if he's found guilty. But right now, he's under the court. He's in a hospital being watched by the courts because he's facing the trial. So he's in custody at this moment.
All right, Sal. So there's a few things I want to hit on here. First of all, when we talk about Weinstein's conviction, like you said, I think he's a terrible person, did terrible things. But when you do look at the court cases, especially with some of the women that made allegations, they had long time relationships with him after the fact, calling him honey, baby, trying to score jobs, etc., and talking to him like a friend. There were problems there for sure. Two, I would say this, it's so weird that when guys like, I don't know, Weinstein or say a Dennis Hassard, every time they're in court or get convicted, all of a sudden their health just degrades like that. I mean, it declines like crazy. They're in a walker, they're in a wheelchair. Sometimes there's the oxygen machine. Just so odd how that happens. And you mentioned the lawyer. And I would be remiss, you mentioned the Taylor case. A lot of people forget about that. Well, Taylor was caught with, I believe, like a 14-year-old prostitute at a La Quinta Inn. Hey, I want to be fair. I like the New York Giants too, but Let's take a look. I mean, this is the underbelly of not only New York, but the world, folks. And speaking of that underbelly, and speaking of the DNC, Eric Adams going to the DNC. Now, as far as we know, according to you, he doesn't have a spot up there as a speaker. I think they might roll him right out there. I mean, 50 Cent's not going to be by his side, but you might get a Megan Thee Stallion. You know, it might be a little hip-hop parade. You get him in a nice white suit. He likes those white tuxes. We've seen him in there. Maybe he goes a little gangster. Maybe he wants to bring it in purple. I don't know, but it could happen. You think he's over there trying to cut some deals with these current investigations and possible prosecutions, no?
Of course, he already tried a couple of weeks ago with Kamala Harris. He promised that he would deliver the black faith vote to Kamala Harris. You know, the churches that Eric likes to go on Sundays and scream that God ordained him to be the mayor. That crowd, he's going to give that crowd to Kamala Harris. And in exchange for that, he's going to want his pardon. But in all honesty, he's toxic. I mean, I understand, Jason, that he's traveling around in the city, and not too far behind him, he's got a federal tail on him now. So I don't know the extent of how serious this is with him, because the more I'm hearing, the more serious it sounds. Him going to Chicago, he's definitely going to lobby to get pardoned. He is terrified. He had an event this weekend of a flag-raising incident or a political parade for India, but he kept mentioning it as if it was Pakistan. He mentioned it 3 times.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, that's kind of a big India and Pakistan, not in love, folks. It's it's a little bit more than like the Yankees-Mets rivalry. I'm just going to throw it out there. It's kind of a big deal. That being said, do you think he makes it to the next election cycle, or just like Cuomo, does he step down and somebody eventually takes that spot before an election?
I don't see him making it. I think this is actually like speeding up, because they have to wrap this up, only because U.S. Attorney only has 18 months with a grand jury. His term might be coming to an end because, look, let's face it, Trump wins. He doesn't have a job. Trump doesn't have to necessarily keep Damian Williams, even though Damian Williams is a pretty good attorney in the U.S. Attorney of Southern District. So he's got to make a move. He's got to bring this indictment, or the whole thing has to fall apart, one or the other. But, of course, Jason, is all kinds of subpoenas flying all around his staff. Allegedly now the NYPD upper echelon, the Con Sofrito crew, they're, those guys, I love to hang out with all the criminals and felons. So this is expanding. So it's extending. It's scary to even say that. And I understand that his staffers, people that work on his administration, they're calling around looking for other jobs. So they know something that we don't know. So him going there, Jason, reeks of help me, please, pardon me, keep these guys off my back, because he has to answer those subpoenas and he can't testify, Jason, because whatever he says that doesn't add up to whatever it is that they know will become a perjury charge.
We're about to hit a break for the headlines. You can check Sal Greco at the Sal Greco over on X, and of course the Sal Greco Show. When we come back, I do want to talk crime and New York State, New York City in particular. Where will it be headed if, in fact, Eric Adams is basically superseded? Can it get better over there? We're going to come back, more TNT after this.
Now's a good time to break the big news.
TNT Radio News.
Matt Boyland here with a look at your TNT headlines. Walt Disney Parks and Resorts is fighting to have a man's wrongful death lawsuit dismissed after arguing his Disney Plus subscription prevents him from taking the case to court. Dozens of people were hurt after a Ferris wheel caught fire at a music festival in Germany over the weekend. And one of Russia's most active volcanoes has erupted following a magnitude 7 earthquake, spewing plumes of ash 5 kilometres into the sky.
Today's News Talk Radio.
Come on, let the man talk.
We never censor our hosts.
Good. Now, talk.
Uncensored news.
On today's News Talk, TNT.
We are back with Sal Greco. Never a dull moment. Literally, what we were talking just during the break, Sal, you were discussing skull and bones found by the Brooklyn Bridge. Now, listen, I have no idea the details of the story. It's a headline. We get the skull and bones. Who knows? Usually a body exposed. I don't give it much more than 18 months. It is New York. You never know. It's Hudson River, maybe preserving it. A lot of preservatives. You get pickled in the Hudson River. Let's be honest about that. Anyway, where are we with crime in New York City? I honestly getting my hair cut just last week. I was talking to the woman. She had driven down from Iowa with the family, first time down in Lower Manhattan, et cetera, et cetera. They got by. You mentioned safest big city in America. Honestly, biggest city, at least when we're talking about size and relative congestion. And I would argue probably one of the safer ones. I've been to a lot of big cities. Right now, the DNC is in Chicago. Give me NYC over Chi-Town any day of the week. That's just me. But can it get better? Especially if you have somebody like Adams who steps down and kind of coronates another person of that level of corruption. And you have Hochul as governor. And unfortunately, I don't see a lot of ways out.
Well, there's a few moving parts here because remember, city council's an issue. The legislation of New York is an issue because you could change the mayor, but you can't change the governor. You still have this, the state assembly headed by Carl Hastie as the speaker, who's too busy, partying all these boits up in the Bronx. Then you have the state senate. That's what's her name? Cousins. She's another one, Andrea Cousins Stewart, or I think she's another one that doesn't want to get involved in anything. So they can't change any legislation because it's one party rule. And then so here comes the mayor. You could do minimal things, kind of like this. Personnel wise in the NYPD, we just had a vicious rape occur. We covered this last week in Coney Island, right? I worked there, and I could tell you, I just got a phone call today from someone who said I was up on that boardwalk, Riegelman Boardwalk, which is Coney Island. It's the infamous boardwalk everybody sees whenever they show Coney Island. And there's usually cops and a Coney Island detail. This is where they flood the area. They've been doing this for every summer. It's a summer detail. They said it's the afternoon. No cops to be found. None. Now, in my day when I worked for almost 8 years. We had cops everywhere. They were not only standing around, walking around, we had a little gator and we had cars going in and out of those side streets to make sure that there's no fugaziness going on. Well, apparently now there are no cops there. And I'll tell you why. Here's the real reason. Eric Adams has mismanaged his police department through his corrupt police commissioner, Ed Caban, because when Eric Adams campaigned on, I'm going to be the mayor, I'm ex-cop, I know what I'm doing, he said he was going to take these administrative units and get rid of them. So the administrative units in NYPD, you would have what's called civilians, like secretaries, you call them PAAs, SBAs. They could handle paperwork. But what this guy did is all his homeboys, all the guys that hang out at the Conso Frito will all be in administrative roles. So then what happens? You're taking away to personnel that belongs in the street because these are full duty cops. They have a gun, they have a badge, they're not limited, they're not injured, so they could go out in the street. But no, they're going to be hiding away in some scam unit somewhere because that's what this administration does. They hook up their boys. So instead of having this area flooded with cops, One Police Plaza is flooded with cops because they have to talk about watching, the Sal Greco show on YouTube, be critical of them. That's the kind of stuff that you have in this administration. So when you have a clown as the mayor, you're going to get a circus. So he needs to get out of the way because he's bringing the circus to New York City. He needs somebody serious to become the mayor who will tackle these problems, whether or not city council or the state legislation wants to help him. There's always got to be a way. You got to get around it. If you see there's a mountain in front of you, go around it. Maybe you try to climb it, but you have to find a way, especially when you're beholden to the taxpayers. These poor people in New York City are being subjected to this corruption, crime. I love how this guy says the safest big city in America, and then he takes a rape and a shooting, a murder down the street from Gracie Mansion. But he says the safest big city in America. He can't even step in his own castle there, Gracie Mansion. This is and Central Park, which never had crime. Crime is all over the place in there. So he says the crime numbers are down. Since he became mayor, Jason, 27%, I believe, the violent felonies are up. And misdemeanor assaults are through the roof. He doesn't want to talk about that. That's when you get punched. It's not as bad as you go into a hospital, breaking your teeth. Someone punches you, that's an assault. We call that assault 3. Those are through the roof. He'll never tell you that, though, because remember, this is the safest big city in America. And remember, crime is down, jobs are up. The city's not surviving, it's thriving.
Well, I will say this. I haven't been there, post-COVID 1984. Last time I stepped foot in there was MSG, I think 2020, Bellator MMA. Great time. And even then, it was questionable. Now, with all that being said, where does that leave, citizen neighborhood watch type organizations? I saw on your feed you had Curtis Lewa of the Guardian Angels out there. That's somebody who I really did become familiar with as a kid during the 80s because of the crime wave there. And they were getting much more press. When you went down to the city, especially you were in the Bronx, etc., Queens, you see a presence. In Lower Manhattan, you'd see a presence. I don't know where they're at today. Have they expanded? Are more people becoming a part of that organization? What do you see?
Well, Curtis, I know him. So Curtis has been, going to different, problem areas, or more so where the migrant shelters are. He's everywhere. Where there's a crime occurring, he shows up. He showed up to West 16th and Surf Avenue where the boardwalk where that vicious rape was. He opened up the hole. I saw him in the hole. He says, look at this. They're camping out under here, which is ridiculous. Now, the city parks department is in charge, so they would have to put a fencing or try to, stop. There's a big hole. Put cement, do something. Their answer to him was, there's nothing we could do. That's always the answer in New York City. Don't ask us to just kick the can down the road. So he's taking initiative. He's going to have his own Guardian Angels go around there, and maybe they need to volunteer to patch up that hole. I mean, these are things that need to get done. You can't go down the street and worry about if you're going to get hit over the head with a pipe, which is what one of these illegals did, and also rape the guy's girlfriend. And I understand they were homeless, but that doesn't mean anything. They're still human beings. We don't discard people because they're homeless. Maybe we should go and help them instead of saying, just discard them because they're homeless. Because that's the easiest thing to do in New York City. So Curtis has taken that, and he's taken another thing where he goes around to these migrant shelters, where Eric Adams is trying to force migrant shelters on these neighborhoods. The neighborhoods don't want them. So you need to, I don't know how this guy just thinks every neighborhood has to get migrants. But now he's targeting certain neighborhoods, Eric Adams, which is why, listen, this guy just has to go. I wish they just came down and said, all right, you're coming with us, and this sideshow finally ends. Maybe they pick him up in Chicago on Wednesday. This is, people in New York City are screaming. But the problem also is, Jason, 20% of the electorate only vote in New York City. Only 20%. That's 80% that stay home. So if you don't vote, you can't complain if you think your vote doesn't count. And I understand it's a huge 7-1 or 7-2 Democrat to Republican, but then vote a better Democrat. And you can't have a corrupt guy like Eric Adams running around where the only thing he cares about is which nightclub he's going to get wine dined and pocket lined in next.
Well, and the next rap video he's going to be featured in, because I'm telling you, that's coming down the line. You can follow him at The Sal Greco. You can check him out, The Sal Greco Show, over on YouTube and beyond. Thank you so much, my man. Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here, and if you enjoyed that segment, I want to let you know that I am live 5 days a week over at TNT.news, and if you go there, you can also interact in the chat. It is 3 to 5 Eastern Time. We are global, baby. So again, if you dug that segment, please come check me out every Monday through Friday at TNT.news.